This is an interview with Helstar singer James Rivera on Thursday, June 3rd, 2021 by Nick Perkel. Now, James, were you involved in any choirs, conservatories, or have any private tutors to study with as a singer when you were younger?
No, until after the first album. Then I did take lessons from a opera trainer. She was actually the vocal trainer for the Houston Opera Club, and she was also the vocal trainer at a what is they call those art institute high schools where special if you had special talents you went to that high school instead of a normal high school, and she was the vocal trainer there. And it just so happened I got turned on to her because of a student that was there, and the first album had already been out, and I just took training from her. I worked with her for a good while, and until she felt that she, everything that she needed to teach me, most of it, because most of it was self taught anyways, but what she could teach me technically, and then she felt that it was time to let her little bird go, as she said, and and that's how it all started.
You re-released the 2016 album Vampiro on the
Uh-huh.
Clad and Black album. Is there anything that you wanted to include on that album the first time that for this time around you got the chance to do?
No, we didn't do anything different to it. Really, we didn't at all. We just really the main reason was we just felt that it needed to be pushed a bit more than it got when it came out, because we were sort of guinea pigs on the label that it originally came out on, and that's just because I was good friends with Dave Ellefson, and it was his label. Although he didn't really run the label, it just he owned it, and the connection between me and him, it seemed like a good idea at the time, because we wanted to maybe go back to being sort of primarily on an American metal label, where we've been with the Germans for many years. But being that they were a new label and just not having quite the ammunition that a band like us really needed, although we were probably the biggest name on that label, probably to this day still are, and I don't even think the label's even there anymore. I really haven't seen much about that label. They did a pretty decent job, but it didn't get like what's happening right now with being back on Massacre. And I mean, obviously, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, this is not even a full length album; it's an EP with releasing a previous album that's already 5 years old, and I have done more interviews than I can count in a month. It's been crazy. So obviously, the promotion is kind of back to where a band like us kind of needed.
Black Wings of Solitude was the first single for the upcoming release. Like, how has the pandemic changed how you try to market an album?
Well, it was different. I mean, I mean, it really wasn't. The only thing that was different about it was just delays, things of that nature, and wanting things to be done at a certain time. But it was probably one of the best things could have done, since we couldn't play live. At least having something out there, and the social media now is different. This would have been a long time ago. We probably would have been screwed, putting something out. But now that everything runs through social media now and everything else, putting that out really helped a lot with getting the name back out there, and it got such a overwhelming response of it, that I think that building up to the EP and delivering two more new songs with a couple of more covers, and just sort of keeping things out there since the band couldn't tour, was definitely a good move on the chessboard.
Now, you have like the full length coming out later this year. Did any of those songs, their compositions predate the pandemic?
Black Wings is probably already almost going on its third year. That Black Wings and Across the Raging Seas, where they just got Across the Raging Seas just kind of got rearranged, but Musically, it was already started. Black Wings was completely done. Those were supposed to be for a movie that never happened. So so we already had those written.
I see. Do you care to talk about that movie that didn't happen, or like the concept of it?
Yeah, the movie was supposed to be. It was kind of gonna, I would say it would have probably been a B-rated, if even maybe even C-rated movie, and it was going to be called Zombie something, and about some rock stars that had to fight zombies in a graveyard and this kind of thing. One of those kind of weird movies, and so the guy wanted and they were supposed to be more of a hair metal band too. On top of that, that was going to be the main stars of this movie. So we never wrote a straightforward ballad, and he's a fan of Helstar, and since he's a Houstonian himself, he definitely wanted us to be a part of it, and asked if we could write a ballad. Something a little bit more tame compared to what Hellstar's known for. And so we said, yeah, I mean, sure, we never have. And so we started thinking back to, like, well, let's see, Jesus, Beyond the Realms of Death by Judas Priest is like probably one of our favorite songs. And how hard is it to write a simple ballad, and we really didn't put a lot of thought into it. And it didn't take a lot of integrity to write Black Wings of Solitude. And then it sat. And then after we listened to it again a year later, because the movie never really happened, we didn't we didn't realize wow, what a masterpiece we wrote, just throwing something together. And that's kind of what happened with Black Wings. And then the more we listened to it, and then rearranging a few little things, and then handing it over to Martin Pfeiffer and Stefan Kaufman to mix and master it and give it the big production, except Scorpions type of production. I mean, at the end of the day, now it's like it's a masterpiece, and it's kind of like, wow, it's our Fade to Black. We just never wrote one like that, and now we realize that in a sense that we might have been kind of cheating ourselves out of writing stuff that could have been more accessible to bigger crowds of people, just because we were always such an intricate band. We steered from writing, I don't want to say AC/DC style songs, because it's definitely not far from that, but we never really thought too straightforward when we wrote music, because we were always that band that, like, each album always had to be more technical than the last.
Now, for this upcoming album, I think you've got like the first single, Black Wings, and two other songs for it. Is there a particular theme to the album that you can share?
Well, Black Wings, it still ties in stuff from Vampiro, because in my concept of the song, it's about it's still very vampire oriented, basically about a vampire who's longing to become mortal again, because he falls in love with the mortal, but he loves her so much that he can't change her to become the undead like him and be cursed. But then there's also a meaning, which is strange, because the song it can have three different meanings. That's my spin on it, just because that's I'm fascinated with vampirism and all that. Larry's input of the lyrics were dedicated to Bruce Corbett, who passed away. So it's also about that, and having cancer. And then also it's about a person that just has an addiction. And a friend of mine that had a very big drinking problem, got a bad DWI, and he had spent a few days in jail, and so there's a different kind of spin on that. So it's still tied in with that. Dark Incarnation is about a very evil satanic witch that Larry turned me on to a movie that he saw, and when I saw it, we both went to town on it, and we wrote that song more about that movie and about uh, this witch that she gives you everything you want, but in return, your soul is what the cost is. And then, oddly enough, Across the Raging Seas is strictly about the Japanese kamikaze pilots that crashed into the ships, back in World War II. So it's kind of weird how they all have different meanings, but then if you leave it up to me and another guy that interviewed me, and then of course the title of the album and musically, it still can be tied in to something to do with the darkness of the undead, because my spin on Dark Incarnation is, yeah, but that satanic witch was Dracula's cousin. So there, I get to throw in my vampire little thing there, and then, oh, okay, that's cool. And then, Across the Raging Seas, the kamikaze pilots, well, yeah, they got the strength because Dracula possessed them to be able to not fear death and dive into those ships, during those days. So it's kind of funny how they all have different meanings, but there's always a way for me to tie in however I want to the undead and afterlife and things to do with vampirism. So that's just kind of what the band has done now. Is that since I've just completely adapted the new name James Vampiro Rivera, and everybody recognizes me now as a vampire or slash Dracula on stage, and that is my permanent image. The band has given me that love and that freedom and support to allow me to live out that little fantasy of always wanting to have that image, but at the same time, it doesn't make them write only about vampires anymore. So that's the agreement we have. Everything I write will always be somehow connected to that, and it can have two or three meanings, but somewhere along the line, I know that it's going to have a meaning of something to do with the undead.
Now, just wondering, did you ever get to explore any interesting locations like Romania that have folklore relating to vampires?
Well, most of Europe is, that way. And unfortunately, when I was singing for Vicious Rumors, Romania was on the map for the tour, and it was the one tour that, believe it or not, that the promoter ran off with all the money, and the show got canceled. And it was a sad thing that we were marooned in Greece for 3 days because of that incident. And of course, I was looking so forward to going to Romania, but I've been in touch with people from Romania, and I know some people from Romania, and I know some things about Transylvania. But in Europe in general, vampirism and a lot of Eastern Europe is very heavy into the concept of vampires and folklore of it. Like our first time in Slovenia, I noticed certain things that were like drawings on buildings, on the sides of buildings, and that had vampires and stuff like that. And of course, their accent is very Romanian like anyways. And so, yeah, that was about the closest I've ever got to really. And of course, going to New Orleans, and then there's an old cemetery in Galveston that is got a lot of old tombstones, and but New Orleans is very very into vampirism and witchcraft and the occult and things like that. And so I had a blast going down there one time for Christmas Eve.
Did you ever check out any of the subspecies movies?
No, not really. I don't think I've really seen too many of those.
Yeah, I was just asking that because, like, they were actually shot in Romania right after the Berlin Wall fell, and they
Hmm.
got like exclusive access to like a bunch of cool like sites that like they never would have gotten otherwise. So it's just like some fun like castles and things of that nature.
Oh wow, huh? That's awesome. Yeah. So I mean, I've been dying to go there. I would love to go there.
When it comes to your music collection, what are your three most cherished albums from Texas musicians?
From Texas bands in
Yeah.
general. Oh man, that's a hard one. Well, I would have to say that I really loved "Prepare to Die" by the San Antonio Slayer, the first Watchtower record, probably, and then after that, yeah, that's tough because I was never really a big ZZ Top fan, just because I mean, I love them. They're very well admired, and I have much respect. But it just never really was into what they fall into as far as classic rock. And I know people are probably gonna find me one day on the street and beat me to death, especially tattooed, bald headed Anglo people, but I just never got into Pantera, so I can't say anything really great about any of their albums that did anything for me too much at all, except for the first album. Um, but you know, and it was a different strain of metal if you think about it too. Anyways, things were very different back then, and Solitude Eternus, anything Solitude Eternus did, of course, I loved.
Now, when it comes to Helstar, what is the coolest thing you own?
The coolest thing that I own,
Yeah, or just like maybe a
as
cherished thing you've gotten over the years from a fan, or like some rare demo or something like that.
oh, for, well, the one thing that I have that I guess is um, yeah, one I haven't gotten any. I haven't gotten it as a present, but I mean, somebody actually got the Nosferatu tattoo on their arm, which for life, and they did it such to a point that it was so. I mean, the details were just incredible on it, and he was from Mexico, and he drove all the way to San Diego just to see us from that part of Mexico on the west coast, and I got a picture of that. That's about the one thing I can think of.
Favorite ghost story or urban legend from Texas?
Wow, who wouldn't like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? But actually, one that's even a little bit more scarier than that, and there's still debate of is it really true, is the story about the Llorona, which means the crying lady in Spanish, and that was a story that all of our parents told us as kids growing up in the Hispanic barrios and stuff like that, and it was to keep us from playing in the bayous. And we used to love to play in the bayous when we were kids because it was, well, there was one just right there in my neighborhood, and that's where we used to go, and they're sort of kind of wooded, and then the bayou runs. It's a body of water that runs eventually to the Gulf of Mexico, but they're dangerous to be around if you're a young kid, because if you can fall in, you could drown for one thing. But it was mainly to catch the snapping turtles and things like that, and uh, you know, and our parents knew that we would go play at the bayous after school, and it was just like one of those things where they didn't like it, so they always said that if we went and played at the bayous, that the Llorona was going to get us. And so, there were times when we used to go play there, and of course, as it started getting dark, and a lot of it was imagination, or it could have been just any kind of weird sound. But then, we'd all be down there and be like, "Did you hear that? Yeah, the Llorona, run!" And so I mean, it could have just been the wind going, "Woo," but yeah, that's the story of the crying lady. What's actually just recently, a year ago, maybe not even a year ago, they finally made a movie about her, which was really cool.
Would you like to go back to any questions?
Uh, no, I mean, I think you asked some pretty interesting questions, which are pretty cool.
Final words.
Final words. Well, yeah, hey, just want to thank everybody for still following us after all these years, and that we're fortunate that considering that we haven't gotten a lot of attention in America for many years because we've always kind of been classified as a European band. That we're very happy to see that more and more interviews and like the one you're doing now and requests are coming in, and something is happening that the new album has finally done to American metal audiences. That people that it's sort of a combination of the people that have known about the band for as long as we've been around, and we have been around very long, since the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. I mean, it almost seems that long. And and the newer metal kids that are discovering the band. And the strangest thing is that they're loving the old albums more than ever. But I think this new album and the new material, what just few little new songs that we put on it, combined with the covers and the direction that we're going, tying in a lot of our old school style, but with the modern Helstar that developed in the last 15 years. It's doing something, and the fan base is extremely growing pretty fast again.
Thank you very much. This has been an interview with Helstar singer James Rivera on June 3rd, 2021 by Nick Purcell.